On your left.
Marvel used to be untouchable. Infinity War, Endgame, two cultural earthquakes that made us believe that the superheroes recipe could never fail. Marvel was the king, the reference in cinematography, raking in a crazy $31.4 billion worldwide. But then it all fell apart. So why did the franchise that defined an entire generation suddenly lost us? Fast forward to today, Avengers Doomsday drops December 2026. It's gonna be the first Avengers movie in 7 years. There's no trailer as of yet when I'm recording this video, but the suspense is already high. Thing is, I'm not even sure I'm gonna watch it. Why? Well, because I didn't do my Marvel homework. And to that, my sister actually answered,
And I barely watched any of the new shows either. But like, there's absolutely no way Robert Downey Jr. is gonna be on screen and I'm not gonna watch him.
which, like, fair. It got us talking about Iron Man and how we'd like to watch it again, and then the conversation quickly devolved into why we loved the old Marvel and the new gen not so much. Narrative and storytelling severely declined after the end of Phase 3, and by that I mean right after Spider Man Far From Home, if not even during that movie. From that point on, Marvel started losing the magic. And when my sister and I broke it down, we realized there were three big reasons why the MCU feels so different today. The first two, we agreed completely. The third one, well, that's when it started getting a bit tricky. To Spider Man Far From Home, Marvel went into overdrive. They released 14 new movies, and if we add to that the new Spider Man movies that's gonna come out July 2026, it means that from the last Avengers movie to the new one, you need to have watched 16 movies, and these 16 movies have an average runtime of 2 hours. You're looking at roughly 35 hours of content for just one saga. Yeah, I've got actual college classes that are way shorter than that. And this 35 hours of watch time is just if we're being nice. If we add to that all of the shows and spin off and series and whatever that Marvel has been pumping out more or less regularly over the course of the last 7 years, it brings us to a grand total of 224 hours and 10 minutes. Yes, I actually did the math myself, so if you could applaud because I am shit at math. And this is just taking into account all of the shows that aired since 2019, which means we're not taking into account 5 seasons of Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., 2 seasons of Agent Carter, Inhumans, 2 seasons of Daredevil, 2 seasons of Jessica Jones, 2 seasons of Luke Cage, 2 seasons of Iron Fist, The Defenders, 2 seasons of The Punisher, 2 seasons of Runaways, 2 seasons of Cloak and Dagger. Yeah. This amount of time for somebody who's just watching any MCU content casually is just abysmal. And I know that all of these shows actually aired over the course of 7 years, but like, come on. In this day and age, who's got the time to watch all of this, remembers all of the details for when they're gonna supposedly come to fruition in the next Avengers movie? With half that amount of time, and I insist with only 100 hours, you could learn basic web development, conversational Spanish, you could write your novel a hell of a lot. And it's not just the hours. All of these shows are scattered across Netflix, Disney Plus, and movie theaters. Add to that all of the movie theaters tickets and the subscription, and suddenly watching any kind of MCU content is like having a part-time job. If you're new to the MCU and you like to get into ride with all of us, you'd need two things. First, the infamous MCU timeline that absolutely scares the shit out of me. Second, you need to watch 2 hours of daily MCU content for 4 months and a half to be right on time for the new Spider-Man release. Yay! And that's why the MCU is starting to feel like you need to do homework to follow it. If you made the mistake like me of falling off the MCU Express and only watching releases you liked, you may try to correct your course by expanding your horizon and dipping your toes in areas you did not wish to explore. And well, that's when the second problem arises. Since Endgame, the quality of Marvel's narrative has significantly dropped, and I know it's not me being all like, oh, it was so much better before, because I'm actually way too young to remember anything before 2010. Marvel's disastrous storytelling is a real issue, so much so that it is a quite common concern among its fans. We can break it down to three core issues. Cardboard characters. Losing established characters would only be heartbreaking if, and only if, Marvel took its time building the new ones. Back in the day, Thor, Captain America, and Iron Man were the figureheads of the MCU, and you can argue all you want about who was the most important. The thing is, everybody, no matter if they watched or not superheroes movies, knew who these guys were. Nowadays, you'd be hard pressed to find who is the figurehead of the MCU. I mean, Spider-Man could have been, but like he's still treated as a kid, and Doctor Strange is off doing God knows what, God knows where, and Wanda is supposedly dead. But more than the lack of a prominent figurehead, it's the fact that the MCU is trying to fill the void left by the old characters by putting in a ton of new characters. In the span of one movie, the MCU is trying to introduce you to a new character, make you care about them, and also make an entertaining movie. And trying to do all of this in the span of 2 hours means that you can't manage it, or at least you can't manage it well enough for your viewers to be impressed. But here arises a new problem. If you don't have time to develop your main characters, how can you even start developing the villains? With significant narrative space dedicated to introducing new protagonists, antagonists often receive minimal characterization. Without compelling villains creating meaningful conflict, even well developed heroes lack the dramatic friction necessary for engaging storytelling. And it is a lack of well developed characters that brings us to our next problem. Weak scenarios. Here's the thing, plot doesn't make great stories, characters do. When you build strong characters, their conflicts naturally create plot. That's why Civil War worked so well. We didn't need a villain. The clash between Iron Man and Captain America was just enough. In the old MCU, sure, we still had villain trying to destroy the Earth or take over it, but like the characters were developed enough that we could have entire movies dedicated to the conflict between them. Some of my best Marvel memories were actually from Civil War, when everybody was trying to decide if they were Team Iron Man or Team Captain America. And like the entire reason why everybody cared about that conflict is because we loved the characters. We even used to root for the villains because Marvel took its time building them. Now, both heroes and villains are underdeveloped, which leads to weak scenarios. Take Ant-Man Quantumania, for example. We had a weak villain, which led to a weak storyline that nobody cared about. Marvel's response has been to crank up the CGI and throw in bigger fight. But instead of epic storytelling, it's starting to look more and more like a fantasy version of Fast and Furious. And then there's a fan service. Sure, I can say I don't like some fan service from time to time, but like catering to fans at a tea time only works until you run out of nostalgia tricks. But you know what's the worst blow of all? After the shallow villains and the hollow storyline, it's the fact that Marvel keep undermining its own tension. Killing tension. Like any family friendly superhero movie, Marvel always had a couple of cheesy storylines here and there. But over the year, the MCU started leaning more and more on comedy, and it's backfiring. Nick Fury, for example, used to be this.
Last time I trusted someone, I lost an eye.
And now he's just this.
Oh, motherfucking!
And okay, I've got to say, I've never been much of an Ant-Man enthusiast, but like the last movie was just the cringiest thing I've ever had the displeasure of watching. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you shouldn't write jokes to like lighten the mood, but if you're not writing comedy, then too many jokes undermine the tension and it evaporates it, because then the viewers and your readers are gonna be thinking like, well, if the characters are laughing, then it's not so bad, is it? And it destroys the stakes. But tension in Marvel is not only undermined by humor, it is also the new Marvel that's trying to get room for themselves by undermining the old one.
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave!
With a box of scraps!
That's the whole point of Iron Man 3, by the way, is that Tony Stark is Iron Man because he's Tony Stark and not because he's a genius playboy billionaire philanthropist. Although I've got to say that the problem is inconsistent throughout the MCU projects. Shows and projects actually nail it, while others are just collapsing under weak characters and misplaced humor. The gap is so wide that the MCU is no longer feeling like one cohesive universe. The post-Endgame MCU struggles to maintain a cohesive tone across its expanding universe, creating a disjointed viewing experience that contrasts with the carefully calibrated consistency of earlier phases. While the Infinity Saga balanced humor and drama with a recognizable Marvel sensibility, recent projects veer between jarringly different tones and visual styles. And that confusion only gets worse when you add Marvel's biggest gamble as of yet, the multiverse. At first, I thought the concept of the multiverse was just actually pure genius because what do you mean there's a universe where the Avengers actually lost plain and simple against Thanos, or like another universe where the Winter Soldier and Captain America actually killed Tony Stark in that bunker? Like, absolutely mind blowing. But then in the Loki series, the Infinity Stone, like the whole reasons the Avengers lost in the first place against Thanos, were used like as paperweight, and it just made me feel like the greatest challenge the Avengers ever faced, like the greatest battle was meaningless, and all of the characters that got killed were just like killed for nothing. In and of itself, the concept of the multiverse is fine, but it is what it means for us as viewers that makes it one of the worst possible storytelling decision ever. The multiverse has basically become Marvel's personal deus ex machina. Like any situation, any sort of trouble the characters are in, screenwriters can now bend the rules to get them out of trouble scot free. Take Steve Rogers, for example. The screenwriter sent him back to the past because it suited the story, but as soon as Loki tries to do the same, suddenly he's a deviant, and it's all because the screenwriters decided so. And sure, I love the first season of Loki, but like, the rules of the multiverse are so convoluted that us, as the audience, can't predict anything. It's all to the whims of the writers. And death, one of the most important tools in any writer's toolbox, became nothing. Characters' death mean nothing. As Corinne James put it in her article, by establishing infinite timeline and variance, death and consequences, once permanent fixture in the MCU, now seem potentially reversible, diminishing the emotional impact of character decisions and sacrifices. And she's right, if every sacrifice can be undone, then none of them carry any weight. Imagine if the concept of the multiverse had been introduced before Infinity War and Endgame. Thanos' snap wouldn't have hit as hard. Watching this superhero kid collapse in a grown man's arms and crying that he doesn't want to die wouldn't have been as excruciating, because we'd known he could just come back. The Infinity Saga worked because the heroes we thought would always win actually lost, and beloved characters died in front of us with no guarantees they'd ever come back.
I said we'd lose. You said, we'll do that together too. And guess what, Cap? We lost. And you weren't there.
The multiverse is basically Marvel's cheat code. Stakes deleted, death optional, logic who needs it? Multiverse means that stakes, which are the most important part of any kind of story, are lowered to such a degree that us viewers won't even care as much as we used to. Because, I mean, what's the point? Characters are gonna survive anyway. And when stakes vanish, so does emotion. And that's the whole heart of the problem, and it pisses me off as much as it delights my sister. Which brings me back to Doomsday. I mean, Tony Stark coming back is actually great on paper, but it is actually an incoming narrative disaster. And before you come for me, I need to say that I am actually aware that Tony Stark is the comic accurate Doomsday. But like, from the point of view of the average Marvel viewer, it is such a sloppy decision. I mean, Doomsday is gonna arrive as this new villain, and he does not have the decade-long build-up that Thanos had. And Tony Stark arc was complete. I mean, Tony Stark died a perfect death. He was one of the MCU's greatest legacy. He was one of the most beloved heroes, and making him come back now could potentially jeopardize the entirety of the MCU. Now, here's my sister's theory. Marvel's is purposefully doing bad movies so they can have an amazing comeback with Doomsday. Well, I mean, I can't say if that's a real theory they have, although I don't really believe it. But like, there's something to be said about the fact that we can go from 7 years with no Avengers movie to like Doomsday and Secret Wars being announced only 1 year from each other. Like, it is quite evident that the MCU is trying to recreate the Endgame Infinity War hype, and they potentially could if they fix their mistakes. So, how can Marvel fix this mess? There are actually three key points they should follow if they want to win us back. The original Avengers worked because we knew them, we loved them, and the chemistry carried an entire saga. Now there are way too many characters and too little focus times. Writers actually call it kill your darlings. Hope Marvel gets the memo and don't let them keep multiplying like rabbits. Slow down, make the universe cohesive again. The MCU is already starting to show signs of tiredness. Fans don't want a cash cow, they want an epic saga like the Infinity Saga was. Third, set clear multiversal rules. If the multiverse is here to stay, fine, but actually put rules in place. You can't make characters come back when it's convenient and others not come back because it doesn't suit your agenda. Stakes need to actually matter. Marvel's still not beyond saving. Shows like Hawkeye, The Punisher, Moon Knight prove they can still deliver. Even Kevin Feige admits that Phase 4 and 5 missed the mark, and Doomsday in 2026 is gonna be their shot at redemption. The question is, will Marvel be able to go back to its roots, or will it bury itself under its own ambitions? Tell me in the comments if you felt the difference between pre-Endgame Marvel and post-Endgame Marvel. But most importantly, I actually want to know, were you Team Cap or were you Team Iron Man? Hit on that follow button for more writing breakdown, and I'll see you next month for another entertainingly educative video. Bye bye. C'était trop